Greetings. Welcome to a new episode of Art Matters. I'm Wayne Quackenbush, your host, and today we'll be interviewing two creative people, one artist, one visual artist, and one writer. And first of all, I'd like to introduce to you Lisa Batchelder and
Lisa Batch, please.
Lisa Batch, and we've known each other a number of years. We met each other through the Portsmouth Arts Guild, and I remember you were displaying artwork there and showing off a lot of the different things you did. And I know you wanted to get right into talking about your art, but you can also kind of give us an idea of your path towards this creative life you have now.
Thank you, Wayne. Yes, I'm Lisa Batch, short for Batchelder, but I go by B-A-T-C-H. And yes, we met at the Portsmouth Art Guild, which is a wonderful place. I really appreciate everything you folks do over there. I look forward to classes and teaching a class next year. Mm-hmm. Excuse me, I did a Zoom class last year, if you recall.
Yes.
And all the different contests and so forth. So it's a lot of fun over there. So I started painting because I needed a creative outlet after being a professional singer on cruise ships and on Broadway back when I started when I was 20 with Richard Rodgers from The Sound of Music.
Wow.
And I went on to do USO tours, national tours for Broadway shows, and ended up singing on the QE2 World Cruises. Mm-hmm. So I had a long career, really enjoyed it. But we moved to Florida half the year. I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, and we have a home in Tiverton, Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. But half the year we go down to Florida, Southwest Estero area. And I needed something to do when I couldn't have my career as a singer. I missed being out there and meeting people and doing something creative. So I wrote some children's books, and then I took lessons in art. And about 10 years ago, I really delved into it. I paint almost daily and go around to multiple lessons and what have you to see everybody. So see all the other artists as well. So I enjoy it.
So you get to interface with the public then?
Yes, yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah. I actually did 15 shows this summer.
Wow.
So, and I made 10 sales, which is pretty good.
That is really good.
Yeah, so I enjoyed myself, including Patriots Place in Foxborough. So that was kind of fun. I had 4 shows there.
Very nice.
So I thought I would start off on this rainy day with something bright and pretty. This is my painting called Glory. I think it's a 24 by 36. And it brings the eye around a flow of bright colors. And then in the center, it's cloudy. It's clouded over on purpose. But you can see faintly some of the flowers showing through the clouding, as well as the violets on the top. So it gives it more of a 3-dimensional look, because as you can see up there, this is like a cover, and then it's clouded, it's covering over the cloud at the top, if you will. So I call that Glory, and I just thought it was cheerful.
Absolutely. Does it really have a sense of gravity about it? Everything is very, like, almost like a floating world.
Yeah, it's floating. Purposely I made it that way.
Absolutely.
So I'd bring your eye around, and then you could see inside of it what's going on.
Yeah, multi-dimensional.
All right, thank you. So another thing that I do is that's kind of interesting. I do abstract as well as realism and impressionism. But what I like to do, most folks have a little difficulty understanding. Now this everybody understands. It's pretty straight on. Flowers and children and so forth. They're pretty, forward thinking, straight on. But I also do something I call multi-level story painting.
Okay.
Now, do you know Don Carteret?
No.
I hope I said that right. Carteret. He's an artist in Tiverton, very well respected. He's been in the Smithsonian, done wonderful, magical, whimsical paintings, and he calls them story paintings. And I love them. They're little mice and bunny rabbits and everything, and he does these minute little dots all over the place. He'll do a series of like 4 frames around it with all tiny little dots, all very precise.
And what's the purpose of the dots?
Oh, it just gives it another dimension. It just
Something to hold
beautiful.
your eye.
You have to see his stuff to understand it. But I do what I call story painting, but I do multi-level. That's more adult, more focused on our age group. So, for instance, I call this one By Choice or By Chance. It tells a story to me on multiple levels. First of all, we have the trees of different seasons. And we see age here because this tree is dying. This one's tethered, and so it's going to make it through the harsh winter. And we have the different seasons, the fall, the winter, and the spring or summer here. We have the age of the elderly man down to the baby. We have the clergy. It represents a lot of different things to me. Then I have the texture and the snow. I also have, it's multimedia. It has art paper cutouts. And it also has the same pattern. It's repetitious, like here, and then here, and then on the pulpit, and on her dress, and a little bit under the bench here. So that's always something to look for.
That's to tie it in visually.
Yes,
yeah,
it
tied
ties
together.
it in.
Sure.
Right. So it's kind of interesting. I like it. Like, when you're young and carefree, you may go to a dance in a beautiful ballroom, and this gentleman is down on his luck. He's an old man just on his own. So it tells a lot of different things on multiple levels.
Like the whole life cycle.
Yes, and this was actually juried into a Spring Bowl gallery show this summer in Newport by, I want to make sure I get her name right, Catherine Lovell. Catherine Lovell juried it in, so thank you, Catherine. Another story painting, multiple level story painting, is Angels Among Us. Now, I think of the nurses during COVID as angels.
Absolutely.
So that's a tribute to them, although Jesus himself is right there at the top. But angels could be seen or felt, or sometimes, like even in the waves of the ocean, I see an angel sometimes, or in the clouds, so they're all around us. When I go out at night to walk my dog, I look up at the stars and I thank the angels, because they're all over the place, in my life anyway. So, and this kind of flows too. It goes around and leads the eye back up. So in my world, sometimes, like when I paint like this, I have no clue when I start off what it's going to end up like.
Really? So
Yeah,
you just
I
build
really
it?
don't. And then all of a sudden I'll say, oh, that looks like an angel or a bird or a rock or something.
Very, very ethereal.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yep.
And so sometimes the angels are in nature all over the place. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much about that. But
We got to actually keep moving because we're
yeah,
running.
okay, all right. So I brought this one I call it aeration, from one of my trips. We went to Venice, and after the gondola ride, we went to a fancy restaurant, and we had the sommelier come to our table, and he's aerating the wine. So I kind of like this because he's realistic, and the background is a mirror, so the reflection's upside down. So this, looks kind of abstract. The tables are
Does.
upside
It
down.
does. So was that from a photograph then? You
Yes,
would use as
I took
reference?
photographs
Yep.
and, yeah. So when I got back, I painted him. Uh, so this is kind of interesting. I brought this one because it's my first one on aluminum. It's a print. It's not, I didn't paint on the aluminum, but it's a print. You can get them done all over the place. They're very lightweight now. I shouldn't say all over the place, but Michael's carries this.
Yeah.
You can have things put on glass or wood or anything these days, so it's kind of fun. And I kind of like the reflection because it's Island Lights is the name of it. And when you're on a cruise ship for a long time and you haven't seen land for 3 days and you approach an island at nighttime and all the lights are on, it's kind of amazing. It's kind of magical, beautiful.
Feels like home.
Right. So, I'm not on the ocean all by myself. There's
Exactly.
land.
Yep.
Land ho. Land ho. Okay, so here's another one from one of our trips. And in other words, I went back to cruising with my second husband. He loves to cruise.
And this is
And we've been to multiple long trips. This is called Roasted Chestnuts in Budapest. One of our last trips was to the Christmas markets. And when we went to Vienna, and then we went to Salzburg with the Sound of Music. And this is Budapest. And I thought it was interesting because you don't see people roasting chestnut too much in this country. So
well, maybe in New York.
maybe in New York.
Yeah,
Yes, there
yeah.
you go.
But not on this scale, you don't.
Not around Portsmouth.
No.
No.
I'm talking about the size of the
Oh,
vats.
yes. Well, these villages, some of them are up all year round.
Mm-hmm.
There's the livelihoods of the people who live there. And so some of the stands like this one is, embedded down. It's not just a
Decorated
flimsy.
for the holiday.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And people back here were dining. I mean, there's thousands of people, and these restaurants went on and on and on. So, and people are drinking during the day because it's bitter cold, so they have to have some warm grog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and their chestnuts, so that's what that's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Incidentally, this was in the Bristol Art Museum's calendar for the year. It got
very
juried
nice.
in
Very nice.
by Linda Rashishi.
Okay.
Do you know her?
I do not.
Oh, anyway, thank you, Linda. And so if you happen to get have the Bristol calendar this year, this is December.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And the last one I brought is ballet class.
Hmm.
Can you see that one? No, Ryan, or should I lay it down on the
No, you're
table?
good.
It's okay like that? Anyway, I just thought that this is a study in little girls. Some are little chatterboxes, really happy to see each other. And this girl's taking it very seriously. She's been practicing, and everybody looks different. I like the way this African American girl is looking right at you.
Mm-hmm.
And so
So I think
it's just a study
we're
of
very
little
close
girls.
to the end of our time.
Yes.
Now, so I just wanted to, again, thank you for coming out today.
It went by so fast.
It did very.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Wayne. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So we're here with author Lisa Molinari. It's the first in-studio interview with someone who's not a visual artist. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you.
And Lisa and I have known each other for closing on 10 years.
Wow.
Because we were both involved with the very famous or not so famous Newport Roundtable Writers Group.
Yep.
That was hosted by Melissa Martin Ellis and her husband Mark Ellis
Right.
in Newport, and they ran that for well over 10 years, I think. And you showed up, as we were just discussing, in 2013,
Yep.
and you were honing some of your essays. Oh boy, I'm going to let you talk in a minute. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
We were honing some of your essays to be put into book form. Now, you have a really amazing life history and career that you can talk about, and I want you to start with wherever you want to start.
Well, let's see. I didn't start out as a writer. I went to college and got a communications degree, and I was thinking about it. Back then, you didn't go to college, or at least I didn't, and say, "Well, I'm into creative things. I'm going to take a major that would help me do creative things." No, back then it was all about pleasing the parents and making a living. And the creative things were a secondary thing. So I that's what I did, and I eventually became a lawyer. And then I married my husband, who happens to be a Navy guy, and found out that I couldn't be a lawyer, couldn't practice law when you're moving every 2 to 3 years because you need a license in every state. And then we had kids, and life just happened. So it was probably 20. Let's see, my husband had a year-long deployment in 2007, and during that time, while he was deployed, I was at home with 3 young kids, and our son had developmental issues along the way, and I did therapy at home with him, and it was just a busy life, just busy. I mean, my law career was way on the back burner, and I was stressed, and at some point, I always write on yellow legal pads, and
In longhand.
Yes, and I was sitting at these swim lessons with the kids. We're doing swim lessons. It was hotter than blazes. I'm sweating, and I was just trying to relieve stress. Writing on the legal pad. I would write to-do lists and whatever would take things out of my mind and put it on paper and get it out of there, so it would stop rattling around and causing me anxiety. And at some point, I just started writing longer things, and it slowly became sort of an idea and then essays. And before they learned the crawl stroke or whatever, I had like 4 essays done. And they were just funny essays about life, just sort of picking apart elements of family and, these kind of things. And Francis came home, my husband came home from that year-long deployment, and I had these 4 essays just sitting in a legal pad. And I had read them to neighbors, and if it made them laugh, I was happy, and they made him laugh. But then we got orders, moved to Germany, and we were in Germany living on an army base in Stuttgart, Germany, on the 4th floor, walk up, no elevator, and I'm up there just sitting there thinking, what am I going to do with these things, what am I going to do with my life, basically. And I thought, just as a New Year's resolution, I decided I'm going to submit them to somewhere to see if I could get them published. And an essay I wrote about marriage, a funny essay about marriage, my husband and I, our marriage, and kind of the expectation you have before you get married and what reality, marriage really is. I sent that one out to a bunch of newspapers, and next thing I know, the Washington Post picked it up and published it.
Wow.
So, yeah, and I was like that. That was my reaction.
What made you decide to send to newspapers?
That was something, I had looked into column writing, because I thought, I liked writing essays, which are short form. And, I thought that might be a nice, I knew nothing about it. Now I realize. But back then I thought, oh, well, I could do this,
Yeah.
And I thought, let's see if I could just get something published in a newspaper. And Washington Post published an essay I wrote, and it was called "True Marital Romance is a Gas," and it's gas is in it. It's about the reality of marriage, so if you can kind of extrapolate that out. But anyway, it was great. It felt great. So I thought, naively, well, maybe I could be a columnist. I'm going to write a column now. And so I started a blog in 2010, and I started trying to shop a column that I called The Meat and Potatoes of Life to newspapers. And I got a lot of rejection. I mean, it just started hitting me right and left. You had to be local. You have to write about local. Local was a big thing, a very big thing. And, because I thought, well, I'm going to be the next Irma Bombeck. I mean, you just trip into these things having no idea. And really, I did end up having a weekly column in a couple different newspapers and sort of self-syndicating to military community newspapers that didn't pay, things like that. And then it wasn't until 2016, after I was at Newport Roundtable, that I got, what I consider was sort of the most legit deal which was I became the weekly military spouse columnist for Stars and Stripes newspaper.
That's
which is,
a big jump from a small
Yeah.
few local papers to something that's published, what, worldwide?
Yes, worldwide, yes. But I had, I think I shied away from using the niche that I had, which was that I'm a military spouse.
Right.
And I wanted it to be, oh no, I can't talk about that too much because I want this to have a wide appeal. Well, there are millions of military spouses. There
Sure,
are
absolutely.
millions of military families. And when I sort of honed in on that and used what I had, I was more successful. And that's a piece of advice that I would give to anybody starting this.
Now, can we step back 1 second? And when you were shopping the initial column to the local papers or the, were you keeping up a schedule? Were you writing were you writing like you had a deadline, even though you didn't have a place to place the work?
Yes, I committed to a weekly column, and I was going to say something about that. Like, is writing a column, is that really art? And there was a John Avalon, who was the editor-in-chief of Newsweek magazine for years, and now he works for CNN. He's either a commentator or anchor. He came out with this book called Deadline Artists, and it was all about columnists and how it's its own art form to write whatever it is, whether it's 400 words, which is what Irma Bombeck wrote 3 times a week, to an 800-word column every other week, to what I write is a 700-word column every week. And it's really difficult to turn something into drudgery because you have a deadline that comes up quickly.
But that also hones your skills,
Yes.
though. It happens
Yes.
with visual artists, too. If you keep up a pace, your ideas start going, and then you're able to do all sorts of things in a deadline.
There are times when you can't even, getting the idea is so painful, that it just feels, the whole thing is just painful. Every word that comes out is pain, and then you hate what you have, and you have to submit it anyway.
There was a lot of fretting going on, like, what am I
Yes.
going to write about this week? You must have been at the swim lessons or at the baseball game or the football game. What the hell am I going to write about?
Yes, and you get used to carrying around a little notebook. It's probably the same with visual artists as well, just a little notebook
you've
or
got to
a
keep
little recorder.
Yeah.
Because once you think of something, no, that's it, that's what I'm going to write about, and poof, it's gone,
Yeah. That's
So
the older
yeah.
you get.
Right. Yes. Oh
Now,
my.
if you wanted to
poof.
do a reading, you're going to have
Yeah.
to start.
Okay. So
First, show us the book,
this is the book
because that's the end product that we were talking about.
Yes, that I honed a lot of my columns into sort of a chronological story. It's written like a sitcom. And this is one of the stories. This is not in the book, but I brought this because it's October, the month of Halloween, and because my friend Wayne likes funny things and he likes creepy things, and this sort of rolls that all together.
Of course.
So this is called The Horrors That Don't Haunt Kids Anymore. Having grown up when kids roamed freely while parents smoked Salem's, ate pimento cheese, and adjusted console televisions, my upbringing was undoubtedly different than my children's. Without a 24/7 supply of internet information, my hopes, dreams, and fears were based on my imagination, influenced by what others told me and what I saw in movies, television, and comic books. Ask my kids what scares them, and they'll tell you ghosts, zombies, evil clowns, serial killers, and shopping mall Santas. Pretty standard. But I feared a lot more as a child, including these 7 deadly horrors. Number 1, quicksand. In the 20th century, we believed that while poking around in the woods, we might inadvertently sink into a lethal pit of quicksand and meet an agonizing death. Why? Because this happened in just about every television show and movie of our time, including The Incredible Hulk, The $6 Million Man, Scooby-Doo, Indiana Jones, Johnny Quest, and Gilligan's Island. Number 2, razor blades in Halloween treats. Before the advent of fun-size candies, many neighbors weren't willing to buy big candy bars, so some handed out more economical but boring fruit and popcorn balls, the perfect hiding place for razor blades, according to our parents. Apparently, the razor blade threat was an urban myth. The real danger was trick-or-treaters coming back to toilet paper your house if you gave out fruit. Number 3, hitchhikers. 40 years ago, hitchhiking was a relatively safe mode of transportation, but disturbing stories circulated at summer camp and slumber parties about murderous hitchhikers. I never saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and my own brother-in-law rode the DC slug lines without incident for years. But hitchhikers were creepy nonetheless. Stepping in poo. When I grew up, it was everywhere. People let their dogs roam just like their kids. No one picked up dog poo except big brothers who speared it with sticks to chase little sisters. Trust me on this. There were no cute signs with nifty bag dispensers reading, "Pick up after your pet." Dog poo was a fact of life, and stepping in it was a real danger. Which leads me to number 5, getting worms. "Put on your flip-flops or you'll get worms," my mother used to bellow between puffs of her Terratin 100. Apparently people weren't as conscientious about vet care back then, so getting worms was a real possibility. When I didn't heed Mom's warnings, I eventually stepped into a pile or two. I recall the ticklish feeling of poo squishing between my toes like mashed potatoes squirted through teeth. Without the revolting odor, it might have been fun, but instead it set me running panic to the garden hose, envisioning hookworms munching on my innards. Number 6, getting chopped up in an outboard motor, locked in an abandoned refrigerator, or having an arm ripped off by a passing car. Although we never knew people who suffered these fates, grown-ups told us that if we weren't careful, these things might happen. We couldn't Google their claims, so we accepted them as fact and were very afraid. Number 7, and lastly, people with tattoos. Today, it's normal to see a mom pushing a stroller with a barbed wire tattoo around her bicep. But in my day, with the exception of military men, it was assumed that people with tattoos had suffered some sort of misfortune in life that compelled them to become dangerous deviants, probably carrying switchblades, ready to carve little kids into pieces at a moment's notice. As you can see, being a kid used to be pretty scary back in the day. Thankfully, nowadays, we don't have to worry because children can safely munch their fun-sized candy bars and dream of their first or third tattoo, knowing that helicopter parents, pharmaceuticals, and the internet will protect them. Now that's scary.
Very good. I completely
Thank you,
identify
Wayne.
with all of that. So, the short version of the story is that you took the episodes, the essays, and tweaked them in a way that they became the book, right?
Yes. When you say a compilation of columns today or a collection of essays, editors or publishers like run for the hills because they say we can't sell that. But so what I did was, because I already wrote these stories and they were all about my family and they were real life, and I think you remember in our writers group, Mark would say, "Oh, it's like a sitcom. It reminds me of a sitcom." So I thought, why not write like a sitcom where you don't end one story and pick up exactly where you left off, but chronologically it follows the life of this family. So that's what I did. And, when you write a column, you have to say, my husband, Francis. Well, when you write a book, you just say Francis.
Yeah,
You say Francis did
because you
this.
have the reference
Right.
from previous.
So you develop the characters, and then you write the stories about them.
So they're kind of like little short stories now, and
Yes.
they do follow a chronological order.
Yes, and I present sort of a problem in the beginning, which is becoming overwhelmed with the details of life. I mean, today, what we live with, and people will say it's not different today. I maintain that it is different today, and that's my opinion. And so in this book, I sort of, how do you get through life today with it being so complicated, with all this minutia? How do you sort it out and remember what really matters?
And with that, we
Yes.
have to end, and thank you so much for coming by today. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of Art Matters with Wayne Quackenbush. Thank you for joining us.